evening, everyone. Welcome to Dr. Jane's DC. We have a great show tonight. I barely have enough time to get in everything I want to do tonight. I'm seriously thinking of extending the show back to 2 hours, which is, I think, what I originally was considering. Boy, there's just so much to talk about. I'm glad you're here tonight with me. We have two amazing guests. We have two military experts on two very, very different topics. Let me just tell you, we have Sergeant Major Tom Satterly, who is portrayed in the movie Black Hawk Down. And I have General Rob Spalding again tonight on a completely different topic than what he discussed in November when he was here to talk about, China trade relations and some of the espionage around them. But anyway, he's going to be here tonight to talk about the coronavirus. You know that I talked about the virus on Monday night. I want people to be properly informed. I want you to know that this virus is particularly dangerous. It's not just another flu. And I didn't get a chance to really finish telling you everything about why the other night this virus is so dangerous. I did mention that it has a 2-week incubation period, which means that there's a 2-week period between the time someone gets exposed and when they start exhibiting symptoms. So you could be exposed to many people who look and appear well, but who are infected and who are exposing you to the virus before you even know you're going to be sick. The virus causes, in the majority of people, a double infiltrate, which means it fills both sides of your lungs up with fluid. This was just published in the world-renowned peer-reviewed journal, The Lancet. And then the third thing is that this virus is particularly virulent because it stays alive for hours in a dry atmosphere, very unusual, and it's airborne to 30 feet. So even if you protect yourself from people who are coughing and sneezing, you need to be a considerable distance from them and have a barrier over your mouth. Anyway, so we're going to have two great guests. I want you to stay with me at the end after General Spalding's interview, because I've started to talk about certain topics that I think are really incredibly important. There's so many of them here in DC. I can't begin to tell you, but in any case, I will have them at the end of my show, or toward the end of my show, and I'm calling them Jane's Rants, because I end up ranting anyway, so might as well label them something, and then you have that to look forward to. I started the show precisely at 8 o'clock tonight with the help of the United States Naval Observatory clock, which is located here in Washington. You wanted things that are on the ground, all DC, you got it. So it was really interesting because the clock ticks on up to the second. I'm going to be just watching our Periscope tonight. I'll turn down the volume because I want to hear your comments. And if you have questions for me or some of the guests, I'm going to try to keep track of that again. You know, I've done that before, and I think people really like it. Let's see. So under my rant list, which you can look forward to in the second half of the show. Hi, everybody. I see some great numbers of people coming into the Periscope. So we'll treat the Periscope as a chat room, even though on the Exceptional Conservative Network, which we broadcast from now, the newly formed, we do have a chat room, but I think you need a certain browser. Correct me if I'm wrong. And just in case I don't get it in on time at the end, I don't want to miss telling you that next week we'll only have one Dr. Jane's DC, and that will be on Wednesday, February 19th. I have a very special guest. I'll announce it later. But the following week is CPAC here in DC, the CPAC conference, and I just want you to know, in case you weren't here the other night, I will be broadcasting live from CPAC from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Thursday and Friday, February 27th and 28th. And then I'll be broadcasting live over a few hours on Saturday with Ken McClinton. I'm really looking forward to that. Ken and I have a lot of fun. And we're going to try to snag some really great guests, kind of impromptu on Saturday, although he may have some scheduled people. But either way, it'll be great. So while we're waiting for our first guest to come in, I just want to review with you my rant topics for you to look forward to later. We're going to talk about how New Hampshire has gone communist, at least on the Democrat side. Congrats to Bernie Sanders. But more on that later. We're going to talk about this Jesse Liu, who was the U.S. Attorney for D.C., who was actually on the way to becoming somebody serving in the Treasury Department. But we're going to talk more in detail about her because I started to talk about how I've been trying to warn the president about moles in his administration, and I have much more information than I let out because I'm concerned for my safety. But I tell you that because after her story, because President Trump pulled her candidacy in the Treasury, and I started talking about how I've been warning the president. I wrote these articles, which I'm going to share with you later, for those of you who haven't read them and have never seen them before. And these left-wing trolls, just came out of nowhere, like one after the other, constantly talking about, she was a Trump appointee, this guy, Scott Stedman, and if you're watching, Scott, you're a moron, because he's telling me to sit down. Yeah, I know she was a Trump appointee. A lot of people were Trump appointees, like McMaster and Kelly and Mattis. And guess what, moron? They're gone. Okay, it takes the president, a little time to figure it out. Just probably a couple 100,000 people he's got to figure out. So I'm going to talk about this attorney, Jesse Liu. We're going to get into some information about it, and we're going to talk about what's happening to Roger Stone, who is a really close friend of my best friend, Laura Loomer's, but I've become friends with him. And in fact, the last time I saw him at a book signing, which was fairly recent, I said to him, Roger, I'm Laura Loomer's best friend. And he said to me, well, that's okay, Jane, as long as you know that I'm her best male friend. So I just gave him a hug. He's so sweet. Hi, Jennifer. Jennifer is one of my Twitter comrades, and I just love seeing her. Thank you for sharing the scope tonight. If you just came in, we have two amazing guests. We have Sergeant Major Tom Satterly, who was portrayed in the movie Black Hawk Down. And I've got General Rob Spalding again tonight. I'm really excited to have him as well because he's going to talk about some of this connection, the coronavirus. There's a lot of interesting information. You're going to be really surprised to hear. You might have thought you were seeing conspiracy theories about this virus. But we're going to ask the general some questions about it because he's got some intel. I'm sure he'll share with us whatever he can share. And so I want to ask him some questions about this because I think I mentioned the other night that this virus is man-made. It's very dangerous. It sounds and looks like it has been developed as, biowarfare. So I'm just looking at some of your comments while we're waiting for Tom. I see him just getting ready up on deck. President Trump is still draining the swamp. That's right. It takes a while. He didn't come in with an infrastructure. He came in, as a businessman. And so he originally relied on a lot of the existing Rhino infrastructure. Remember what I said, establishment GOP, they're no different than the Democrats. And if you don't believe me, figure out why Obama got everything he wanted for 8 years with a Republican majority House and Senate. Think about that. Do the math. So we have a lot of snakes in our grass. I see Tom is here. I'm going to bring him up, and we're going to welcome him to the show. I'm really excited to bring on my first guest tonight. I'm glad to see him here. and he can correct me if I have his titles wrong. Sergeant Major Tom Satterly is a highly, and I emphasize highly decorated combat veteran who was portrayed in the Oscar-winning film Black Hawk Down. He served in the Army for 25 years, most of that time in a U.S. secretive special operations unit. He's led hundreds of missions, and he was awarded 5 Bronze Stars, 2 of them for valor. Today he's fighting the battle against PTSD for his fellow veterans through his organization, which we're going to talk about tonight, All Secure Foundation. Tom, welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.
I'm honored to have you here. I really want to thank you for your amazing service to our country. It almost chokes me up a little bit, to be honest with you.
It certainly did me for a while.
Yeah. Tom, I wanted to ask you, you served as an officer of Delta Force. The way your book is described it's an inside look into what you experienced. And I know that we could take hours to talk about this, but I wanted you to give folks a little bit of an idea of, what does it mean to be part of the most elite and the most secretive special ops unit? Like, whatever you can tell us, but I'm not asking for the intel, but what is that about?
If you could imagine being at the NFL, at the Super Bowl, every day of your life with the best possible players in the game with the same motivation, the same end game, and the same drive and determination as you, only you think you're not worthy enough, so you strive every day to be better and keep up. And then, oh, by the way, here come those new kids, right? The new kids kicking at your heels, wanting your job. So it was a relentless, nonstop attempt to always be better every day that made us all better, but also broke us down on the inside.
It's that breaking down on the inside that I don't think people really have an appreciation for. What types of things? I know there are deaths and people are maimed, but it's so much more than that. It's the time away. How do our vets? How are they coping? How do they even manage this?
I think how they attempt to cope is through alcohol, abusing of their pain medications, and isolation. And it's sad because all they simply miss is the tribe feeling. They think they miss combat. They think they miss the adrenaline, and some do to an extent miss the adrenaline and the excitement. However, I haven't talked to a lot of people who've actually been in real combat that want to go back. It's just that you watch too much TV and you think it looks great, which is a good recruitment video. It's what got me in. But it takes its toll. The isolation and the not feeling part of something big again. So a lot of what we do is push people to find another service, find another active service, whether it be individual in your neighborhood or as part of your job. But keep giving back, because that's what really keeps people moving.
Yeah, it sounds like you're and I want you to tell me how All Secure got started, but it sounds like you're taking that help and that type of assistance a little bit of a step further than either the medical community has so far or the VA. Tell us about how it got started and what it's about.
It got started because my wife got tired of looking for resources to get me help. Living in a non-military town, it was difficult for her to try to push me into different modalities of healing. So it was difficult, and she decided, let's put together a resource library for other veterans or spouses who can help. And that grew into, we want to do more. We want to actually have a hands-on kind of scenario and help. And we didn't want to just be another foundation that helps veterans send a veteran to Disney or send him on a hunting trip, because those are great. However, when he goes home, he's still just someone's spouse. And we realized that whether you're a CEO or you work in the mailroom or you're a general or a private, that when you go home, somebody's spouse just wants you to love on them, take care of the kids, help with the house, and not go militant and scream when the dishes aren't done. And so we decided to work on the family as a unit, this couples as a unit, to reintegrate and identify those triggers of PTS and stop that muscle memory of arguments.
Yeah, that carries over to when warriors come home. Tell me a little bit more about, I guess, how this affects the family, and how your organization is a little bit different, and how it helps the family.
We help the family identify on both sides, not just the spouse understanding the veteran, but the veteran understanding the spouse, what goes on at home. We go off to work, we do our thing, and then we come home after months or a year, and we want to act like we just left yesterday, and we want to jump right back into the family and start helping when actually that unit has a system down and you're just in the way. And there's a lot of arguments that come from that. And plus, not only do just any couple grow apart over time or grow maybe more distant over time unless they stay connected, add the distance and time away from your family, now you're growing apart even faster, and it's more difficult to reintegrate when you come back home. So we help them with conversational tools and ways to think about getting to know your spouse and your family again, taking
Mm.
them on dates and not just treating them like they've always been there and taking them for granted.
Tom, I wanted to, that reminds me of, at the State of the Union last week, when the president was honoring a number of people, but in particular, there was the military wife and her two children, and the president surprised her. I actually saw a little confusion, like what you just described. If he just came back and it was a surprise, and they haven't had a chance to say hello, reconnect. I saw a little. I don't know what I was seeing. Did you have any thoughts about that in general? You don't have to speak to those poor people, but because I felt like they were put on display, and maybe he's been away for a while. What you just described. What do
That
you
is
think?
probably, we all love those moments where we get all teary eyed and we love to see those reunions, but those are difficult times and they last a short amount of time. I
Mm.
know I've come home several times with my young son growing up who freaked out and screamed and wouldn't touch me for a day or so. He didn't know who I was, and he was too young.
Oh.
My spouse,
Mm.
my ex spouse at the time, would just take off and go back to work. They have their lives to live, and in your mind you have this week long parade, vacation. We're going to have some time off, yet your spouse has to continue working, so your time off is alone, and then you're back at work, and it's business as usual. So those reconnection times are tough. They kind of need to be private, um, slow and quiet, conversational, get to know each other again. Because I know after combat, I've come home and broken down before, like, oh, how was it? And just I couldn't even utter a word. So those are very difficult moments, especially after the time that they were probably apart.
Yeah, and there's that phenomenon of, you've been in a place that is horrific, unpredictable, and I know you're well trained to manage it, but I'm just suggesting that you come back home and everybody else is going about. You kind of touched on this. They're going about their business, and even the family has to, because that's how they've been surviving. Um, does your organization help in terms of information or services, with those readjustments?
Ourself, we help with the readjustment, and if they come to a retreat, we follow them for a year after the retreat to make sure that they're following those same tools. If we don't do it, we partner with other nonprofits that we have vetted and we know are good, and we send them directly to them. We're not one of those nonprofits where I've heard before, well, we're competing for donor dollars. I'm competing to get as many people help as I can, and if I can't do it, I'm going to send you somewhere that can. So we talk to people about planning. Some of the veterans get in and they're out 4 years later. They really don't have a skill. They didn't learn anything more than they knew when they got in, and they're confused as to why they can't get a job. So we help a lot of people with planning, future planning, and saving money and thinking ahead. Those things that I didn't really do, even as long as I was in. I just always thought I'd always be in and never really considered after. It's not like you retire. It's you move into another career because you're way too young to retire.
Yeah, and you have so many amazing skills, and obviously not all of them are going to translate to civilian life, but there must be some amazing skills. Is there some discussion about that for helping to rehabilitate, themselves? I'm talking about these returned warriors, for them to help themselves rehabilitate through the PTSD by finding purpose.
Absolutely. We have them look for purpose. We have them find their passion. We've talked some of them into doing their passion that they were afraid to do. I wanted to do music. I want to get into poetry writing. Well, why wouldn't you then? If it's your passion, take it on like you did the military, and make it your job and love doing it. I mean, and don't worry about what other people think. That's always
Mhm.
that cultural belief that, oh, I got to be a man, I got to be tough, and I can't write poetry or dance or sing. However, that would be the most therapeutic thing, and we we reword everything. We don't call it therapy, we call it retraining. We don't call it poetry. We call it, oh, that's a music sheet for a metal band if you want, whatever. Everybody has to write the words down, and most people write about their experiences and how they feel and how their life made them feel, and that's music, that's poetry. And so,
Mhm.
kind of breaking that cultural barrier that they've been hidden behind for so long, it took me a while to realize that I could have empathy and compassion for other people, and not everybody was out to get me, and everybody was bad. So once I did, my life completely changed.
Yeah, you have to learn that you're more than a soldier, or you're other things in addition to being a soldier. Let me ask you this: I love the title of your. It's a book as well, right, Tom?
Yes,
Yeah,
all
and the
secure is the book.
foundation, right? How did you come up with
Yes.
All Secure?
My wife kept asking me for a term or something that would fit for the foundation as I was writing the book. And we were trying to think of a thing that would, any kind of feeling of calmness. And so she posed that question: is there a military term that you have? I said, well, I know that in our unit we have a call that we make once we're on target. Everything's chaotic. People are shooting at people and each other, and everything's finally over. And when everything's under control, for the first time, you can relax a little bit and let your guard down. Everybody calls in all secure. And so that lets everyone know that the target is safe and secure. And just for that moment, you can let your guard down a little bit and relax, and not take off that armor, but mentally take off that armor and kind of let yourself, calm down a bit from that chaos.
Yes, that's awesome. I really love that because I'm thinking about folks that suffer from PTSD. A lot of them, warriors, but also in life in general. And to be able to tell yourself, it's okay. It's all secure right now. You have a moment. That's wonderful. Tom, how can people help you? I guess, tell me a little bit about, in our last moment or two here, what would best help you? Is it money? Is it gifts in kind? And tell me a little bit about how they can get it to you or reach you.
It's always money. That's the
Mm-hmm.
easiest and most flat way for people to help. It doesn't have to be $10,550. It could be whatever. You can go to allsecurefoundation.org. There's a donate button on there. There's a contact info button on there that you can write in and offer what services you can provide. So many people say, I want to help, just let me know. I have no idea what those people can do for me. I don't know
Mm.
their skills. So I asked him, you have a responsibility. What is your response to your ability? Let me know what that is, and what is your response to it, and how much time can you donate? Everybody wants to help. Everyone says that, and it sounds like that passing "How are you? I'm fine" kind of thing, where it's just kind of brushed off, and it's common, it's common communication, but really no meaning behind it. And I know people want to help, but we always need money because these veterans do not pay for these retreats. It's all paid for by donors, and every penny we get goes back into those retreats to help those veterans. But we can use services if people provide services, or if they want to offer up time on the phone, or to talk to veterans, or to call out and help. But we just don't know what people can help us with until they tell us how they can help us and the amount of time they can help us with. So that's why money's always the easiest thing, and that's why we make sure we put it to good use.
Yeah, and how often do you have these retreats? I'm assuming these retreats are like sort of an immersion, and this is where they try to transition and they learn your skills and your ideas and all that. How often are you trying to have them?
We're doing 7 this year, and with those 7, we're doing 4 active duty, full time, like 300 single soldier retreats to talk to the younger soldiers who may or may not have been to combat yet, as to what to expect, so they can have that tool in their bag before they get injured, if you will. And then we're doing more speaking engagements around the nation as well, to just other organizations about PTS awareness.
Or do you have? Is there like an events calendar on your website as well, where people can see if you're going to be in their area for a speaking
Um,
engagement?
We will post it. This year, all 7 of our retreats filled up in less than a day.
Oh
So
my.
that's amazing and scary at the same time. So we didn't post open entry this time because it filled up so quick, but we will post those dates and the general area. And that way, if people want to reach out and just pop in. We have a lot of great people to stop in and talk, but a lot of the sessions are closed and private, but they're also designed to be fun and active and together as a couple. So everything that they do, whether it's at dinner or golf cart riding through the caves or through the woods, they have an activity that they have to practice with each other, and it's all about communication.
Wow. Tom, really, God bless you for what you're doing, and your wife as well. It sounds like she's been a great partner in ideas and setting this up with you, and it's really important. And I want to have you back, in the not too distant future. And I really have a hunch that if we talk in 3 to 6 months, you're going to tell me that you have many more of those sessions filling up.
Absolutely. And we're working to have more sessions. I mean, we could double that. It's all scalable. However, you run out of funding at a certain point. So we're at 7 this year. We'd love to double it. But, my wife's doing her own thing, working on a book called Virago. She's also got a site for female spouses of veterans called Virago that she's also trying to help out as well. So
Tell
we're
us
trying
the
to grow.
address of that site, Tom, of your wife's
It's it,
website.
It's on All Secure Foundation right now as
Okay.
well. It's a subset on there, and you could click on it from there, and it takes you straight to it. And it's just
Okay.
for the women spouses to connect and talk about the things that make them feel unsafe and better ways around it.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. It's such a comprehensive program. Well, thank you so much again for your wonderful service and for continuing that service. It's really
Thank
amazing.
you. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It was an honor, Tom. Thank you so much. Good luck with the foundation.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Good
appreciate
night. Wow. Some people, complain about their life, their lot. And we're all sensitive to, getting depressed and down and all that. But you look at these American heroes. I mean, they went through a lot. They served, they sacrificed. I mean, I saw from the summaries of Tom's book, I mean, he lost 3 marriages and probably as well as other relationships, and not to mention the pain and suffering. Psychic pain or pain of the mind is every bit as painful as physical pain. So just warms my heart. I mean, he's just a role model and an inspiration and an amazing American. So I'm really honored to have him. Hope you enjoyed that segment. We're going to go to a quick break. Just a little bit of a commercial here. And on the flip side, we will be talking to General Rob Spalding, and we'll be talking about Dr. Jane's rants. And if I see your questions on Periscope, I'll address them. So we'll see you in a minute or two.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Jane Ruby in Washington, D.C., author of A Sea of New Media. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this book because I was inspired to write it by Andrew Breitbart, who actually vindicated the Tea Party after they were falsely accused of calling 3 African-American congressional leaders the N-word, and nobody could come up with a video or an audio. So he told them weeks later, and on the National Mall, to hold up their cell phones, and thousands of people held up their cell phones, and you could see this beautiful in the night, and he said, there you have a sea of new media to capture the lies. Folks, we can't trust our mainstream media. We cannot trust our press.
When you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
When President Trump says they're the enemy of the people, he's not being a dictator. He's telling the truth. They won't tell us the truth. But if we all have our cameras out in public, they can't lie if thousands of us are showing a video of something happening or not happening. So I encourage you to pick up a copy of the book. It's called A Sea of New Media. And if you think you can't make a difference, think about the guy who caught Hillary Clinton on tape. The average citizen caught Hillary Clinton being dragged into the van at the 9/11 memorial in 2016. We never would have known she was ill if it wasn't for that single individual citizen. Pick up a copy of A Sea of New Media on Amazon, and if you happen to see me around DC, I'll be happy to sign the book for you and give you a big hug. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and I have a show in DC called Dr. Jane's DC, Tuesday and Thursday nights on the Exceptional Conservative Network. Please join me again. I'm Dr. Jane Ruby. See you next time.
So, guys, I wanted to do one of my rants while we have time, because I have a feeling we're going to go full on with General Spalding. He's just got such great information, and he's so wonderful to talk to. First of all, Bernie won New Hampshire primary, Democratic primary last night, and it just stuns me that he would be the front runner. I mean, the whole Democrat Party is a mess. It's a dumpster fire, and there's nobody in there that could beat President Trump. Let's face it. There's also no one in there with half a brain, and they're either lying or they really are into far left policies, and which is swung them all the way into socialism. But they're just. I mean, I said congratulations to the Democrat Party. You've all become the Communist Party in the United States. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. Their policies are socialist. And somebody was arguing with me on Twitter today. Here's a rant saying, he's not. Bernie should be embraced because he's not a communist. He's a socialist, and like they don't even understand that they don't understand that is a form of communism. I mean, gosh, Dems are dumb. The left wing is dumb. Woo! It's just unbelievable. So now here's someone saying. A jury, one of my other rants is going to be Roger Stone. A jury indicted Roger Stone. A jury convicted him of 7 felonies. Okay, all right. You know what? This is the ignorance that I find really difficult myself to tolerate. I don't mind a difference of opinion. I don't mind even if someone is, a little inappropriate. But gosh, don't be ignorant. I mean, this person doesn't even know the backstory. Doesn't even understand that, that General Flynn was set up. Stone was set up. Hillary Clinton committed so many crimes, nobody's touched her yet. Hello, AG Barr. Wake up, Attorney General Barr. Go for the low-hanging fruit. Hillary, Anthony Weiner, I think, is in prison. Thank you, Andrew Breitbart, for that one. It's just ridiculous. Oh, God. These people think that President Trump is such a danger to the country. They don't understand that their lives are better. The economy's better. More people have jobs. And they're trying to destroy the very thing that's helping them. I mean, just because they don't like him and, they drink the Kool-Aid, and it's really ridiculous. So annoying. So that was one of my rants. I don't know where it went, but I had a fun picture with Roger Stone that I posted on Twitter today and Instagram. So I'm not sure what happened, but anyway, this whole thing came about because there was an attorney, a U.S. attorney, named Jesse Liu, who actually prosecuted General Flynn's case, and, we know how that turned out. And even though the president nominated her for a Treasury position, I think he found out, he got the right information, he found out that, she's a mole. And, I was, so the best way to summarize it is, Rich Higgins, we had him on the show a couple of months ago. Rich Higgins was, by his own words, perp walked out of the White House because when the 3 bad generals were there, which was Mattis, Kelly, and McMaster, Rich developed a memo that he tried to get to President Trump, that eventually, I understand, got to President Trump, but not before Rich was fired at the insistence of McMaster, who fired him, Derek Harvey, and Ezra Watnick Cohen. So Rich gets it, and Rich was saying about Jesse Liu, because everybody on the left was like, Trump nominated her, she's fabulous. And he said, oh, okay, the same Jesse Liu that didn't prosecute the inauguration violent protesters, the same Jesse Liu who didn't prosecute the Kavanaugh liars. People were lying under oath against Justice Kavanaugh. People, the same Jesse Liu that didn't prosecute or indict the Awan brothers. Are you kidding me? That's my rant. You know when I say, "Are you kidding me?" That's my rant. Same Jesse Liu who prosecuted General Flynn, and she's going to control sanctions in the Treasury Department. So the president got the right word because he's sorting out the swamp, and he took her off. He took her nomination off. Good for him. You know, it's these people are stupid. Oh my God, just don't be stupid. Let's see. So we're waiting for General Spalding. He'll be in any moment. Oh yeah, he'll be in. I'm sorry, in a couple of minutes. So that's why I'm doing my rant now. And by the way, staying with the Jesse Liu thing for a minute, because I know we have a couple more minutes. 4 career prosecutors, I don't know if you caught this in the news, from the D.C. Attorney's Office, Jesse Liu's office, withdrew from the Stone case after the Justice Department overruled them on a sentencing recommendation. They were going to send Roger Stone, who was set up, it was a perjury trap, and they were suggesting 7 to 9 years so this guy can die in prison for what? Because he was a Trump supporter? Come on. I mean, Manafort's still sitting in solitary confinement. General Flynn is still facing, his case. It's ridiculous. So what I was saying was, President Trump has a lot of moles to clear out. And you just have to be patient. A lot of us try to get information to him. In fact, my first article that I published, I want you to go to drjaneruby.com, okay? All my articles are published there. I'm going to start uploading all of these videos because you never know if I'm going to get censored by YouTube, which is where I upload them after the show. And they sit on Periscope and Twitter, but God knows how long I'll be able to do that. So I was told in 2017 by a White House official that the greatagain.gov database, remember the database where President Trump wanted to people who were loyal and who wanted to serve in his administration, they could file their resume. Well, they were complaining in the EEOB that they didn't have enough help. And I said, well, what about that database? Sean Spicer tweeted like several days after the president won that within a week or two there were 40,000 applications, and I'm sure they got well into the 6 figures. And I was told that database was accidentally deleted. Okay, hello. Like, you mean like with a cloth? Like what was it called? Like what Hillary did? So I wrote an article, and the article was called "Trump Supporters Need Not Apply. Whatever Happened to greatagain.gov." And it was picked up by Jim Hoft and Gateway Pundit. I was really thrilled about that because it went national, and a lot of people picked up on it. Some of the MAGA folks like Mike Cernovich helped out, featured it, talked about it, and from there, because it got so much attention, I started getting these calls. People were calling me out of the blue and saying they didn't want to give their name, but they would say, I work in the Department of Agriculture, I work in the Department of whatever, X, Y, and Z, all the different federal agencies. And they said, we got jobs after the Trump election. We worked on his campaign, we were appointed, but now we have bosses and managers that we're figuring out are Obama holdovers, and they're writing us up, and they're trying to get rid of us in these agencies. So I published the second article, fashioned after, of course, the president's famous Apprentice show. And this article, which is also on drjane.com, was entitled "Trump Loyalists, You're Fired." And it explains how people were being purged from the federal agencies. And you got to check it out. It's a great article. That got picked up by a couple of outlets. And it basically was, an attempt to warn White House officials who are supportive of the president. Maybe Kellyanne Conway would see it. Maybe the president would see it. He does pay attention to social media. Let's see. I see we've got a fairly good crowd in chat room and in Periscope chat room. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, again, as I said before, next week there will be no Dr. Jane's DC on Monday, but we will have a Wednesday show, and I have a special guest next Wednesday, February 19th. And on the 27th and 28th, I will be with Ken McClinton and our journalist, our broadcasting network, The Exceptional Conservative, at CPAC on Thursday night. Ken will be broadcasting 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Someone is asking, if you were Kellyanne Conway, how would you deal with that nasty husband of hers? Well, she sure has a lot on her hands there with George Conway. They're referring to George Conway, who's an attorney, a rabid anti-Trumper. I don't know what to think. I'm not a close friend of hers. I don't really know. I know she is a devoted Catholic, and they don't believe in divorce, or at least she doesn't. I don't know how I would deal with it. I just think that if a spouse was loving, even if they didn't agree with the politics of their spouse's boss, they should probably just keep quiet until the boss was out of office. So, I don't know, call me crazy. But it just shows that he has quite a lack of respect for Kellyanne, and that's a shame, because I find her to be an amazing American. I have a lot of admiration for her. I've met her and chatted with her a couple of times. And of course, she's amazing on, when she's on the news shows. Now, I don't see General Spalding. Let me just see if I can get him on the phone, see if he's having any technical trouble. Let me just, I can keep you guys on here. Let's see if... I have his phone number. Let's see if maybe he's having difficulty getting in. By the way, since the Exceptional Conservative Network, which is the umbrella group that I'm under, Dr. Jane's DC airs through, since the Exceptional Conservative Network started its own network, conservative network, and all of our shows on that network moved from ENET to the Exceptional Conservative Network, we have had an explosion of viewers. We've had the explosion in the number of viewers. We have increased our viewership and hits to the site by over 500%. So we're doing something right, folks. We've had Judge Janine, we've had Alan Dershowitz, we've had Chris Tanto-Peranto, who's one of the Benghazi heroes. Let's see. Some people just still catching up on the commenting around Kellyanne and her husband. Let's see, what else can I tell you about? So Ken's show follows mine. He's on, I believe, every night, or at least Monday through Thursday, but it could be every night. Let's see if we get... Hang on, I think we may have the general. Okay, great, guys. We have our next guest coming up. We unfortunately don't have him live on the screen, but he is definitely alive and well tonight. Let me give the general a proper introduction tonight. General Rob Spalding is Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. He focuses on U.S.-China relations, economic and national security, and the Asia-Pacific military balance. General Spalding retired from the United States Air Force as a brigadier general after more than 25 years of service. And you might also find it interesting to know he's a former China strategist for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon and senior defense attaché to China. He earned his doctorate in economics and math from the University of Missouri, and he's fluent in Mandarin, and he's a great expert on all things China. General Spalding, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you could spend a little time with us tonight. I want to talk about this coronavirus thing because I know we had you on a couple of months ago. We talked about the trade situation, but this is much more timely right now. Let's just start. I call it China's coronavirus. General, what is going on here? Is this biowarfare?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think the answer is we don't know because, quite frankly, the Communist Party has not been transparent about anything with regard to the virus. And I think finally, because it was so bad, they had to open up to the WHO and CDC. But, this originally started back in December 1st, and they didn't come clean about it until the middle of January. So, I think it just represents how dangerous a totalitarian regime can be to essentially humanity when they're not willing to come forward or come clean with regard to a potential global pandemic. And not to mention the fact that they are doing coronavirus research in a lab not some 20 miles away from where the epicenter, where this supposedly occurred. So I think there's a whole lot to be suspicious about here. And because they're a totalitarian regime, they're so secretive, it creates this added problem. How do you deal with the pandemic once it starts?
Well, your book, Stealth War, talks about, the subtitle is How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. Is this part and parcel of their warfare? I heard that this virus is manufactured, so we at least have some suspicion that they or somebody created it.
Well, there is some suspicion about that. I think the answer is we don't know. That being said, it is true that doctors there in China have genetically modified humans. One of the doctors essentially did gene modification on humans. A pair of twins were born that essentially were supposed to be designed not to be susceptible to the AIDS virus. And so they have a pattern of doing things that are counter to essentially standards and norms of the international community and really against morals when you think about it from the perspective of genetically modifying humans. So, it adds to this challenge that we have with them, which is how can we trust them to be part of the international community when they're so willing to violate everything that we find to be reasonable with regard to a developed country?
Well, I think it's fairly well established that we can't trust them. We can't trust anything they say or do. Do you think we have adequate intelligence, security, around this country and what they're doing?
Well, I think you bring up a good point, and the answer is we don't know. And the challenge with the Chinese Communist Party is not only do we not know what's going on, but we embrace them the same way we embrace a country like the UK or Germany, which is a developed democracy. In fact, my son's teacher, he's a senior in college, told him that China's a democracy. So there's a belief by the American people that you were dealing here with a democracy, and in fact, it's one of the most oppressive regimes in the history of mankind, equal to Germany during World War II and equal to Stalinist Soviet Union. So, I think the challenge for Americans is really not understanding the type of regime that the Chinese Communist Party represents.
Well, what if the average person, the average American citizen did grasp that or read your book and got a little bit of a better idea of that, what are some of the best things they could do? Should they be writing to the government, to their representatives? What can we do?
Well, so one of the big challenges that we have today is that the leading investment officers of our retirement funds are essentially sending our retirement over to China to invest in companies in China that don't have to comply with audit or transparency requirements that U.S. companies do. So you don't actually know what you're buying, and yet, over the last year, $400 billion of Americans' retirement funds were sent to China. This is the kind of behavior that occurs because we've allowed China to be essentially the lead, if you will, of the global supply chain, and really have allowed a lot of our capital, a lot of our innovation, a lot of our technology and talent to be invested in what is a totalitarian regime. So not only are we essentially helping the Chinese Communist Party oppress the Chinese people, but we're doing so while at the same time destroying the communities in the United States and the lives of people that were employed in companies that were represented, the 70,000 factories that closed since China entered the WTO. It's been so bad, and this is where I was doing research at the Pentagon. It's so bad that we can't even manufacture circuit boards for our leading fighter, the F-35. So this is a challenge we face. Of course, now the administration is trying to figure out how we, begin to unwind this, but it's going to be a long road to getting America back to where it needs to be.
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, I like what the president has done so far. I get a sense that he definitely, recognizes that China's the threat, not Russia. But do you feel he's got, an appreciation for the entire scope of the danger of China?
Well, I think it's difficult for anybody to have a perspective on the entire scope unless this is what you study. Of course, this is what I've been studying for the last 7 years, the last 5 or 6 years of my time in the military. And then the last year, I'm still focused on this, understanding the ramifications of everything that's going on. The book is really designed to be a quick read, to kind of give people an overview of what's going on, but it really requires a lot of effort to kind of understand how vast what they've done, and it spans investment and trade and immigration and academics and politics and media and the internet. There's so much activity because they have so many people and so many resources, particularly a lot of the resources, the money from the United States that allows them to buy off, essentially politicians and corporate leaders and financial leaders nearly everywhere, that it really takes a really focused attention on trying to unwind everything and understand everything they're doing. That's why, by the way, you've been seeing recent notifications like the head of the chemistry department at Harvard essentially being indicted for providing Department of Defense research to the People's Liberation Army. Also, in Texas A&M, 100 professors are essentially part of the 1,000 Talents program in the Chinese Communist Party. And so all of these things are coming to light now, and there's going to be so much more that comes to the fore because, quite frankly, they've been working for the last almost 3 decades to essentially undermine our society from within.
Wow. That's pretty heavy. And I think the extent of the infiltration in our country, in our institutions, in our communities, and it's in parallel, if you don't mind me making the connection, it's in parallel to other, groups like the Muslim Brotherhood that have infiltrated our country. And it's interesting because it's more on a civilization basis. They're infiltrating our public offices, our institutions. I mean, what are we doing? What's the government? Is the government doing anything? What are we doing as a country in general that you know of to counter all of this infiltration?
Well, so prior to the release of the National Security Strategy in December of 2017, where I was the chief architect of, in 2018, the government began to fight back. And so the things that you know of, that you've heard about in the news, are things like CFIUS reform, which is really getting into how are the Chinese investing in our lead technology in the United States. Tariffs. Also, the Department of Justice and the FBI have started really going after. So prior to 2018, when Chinese Ministry of State Security operatives were in the United States, they were essentially granted free reign to go wherever they wanted. So this is like having, essentially their CIA all over the United States. And so what's been happening in the federal government since 2018, so we're really 2 years in now to these agencies and departments like the FBI and the Department of Justice and the State Department and others are starting to actually fight back. Now, like I said, it's been so long and so deep in terms of the infiltration that's going to take a while to unwind it, but at least the government's fighting back. I would say that the one piece that we still need to do that I think will help us in this competition is begin to invest in our country again. So infrastructure, manufacturing, science and technology, STEM education, we need to invest in, and we need to protect our data. I think that's the most critical thing. That's what I've been focused on, is protecting the privacy and the security of Americans' data, not just on the personal level, but also on the commercial level. Because what's happening is the Chinese are using that to essentially begin to conduct espionage on Americans and essentially begin to slowly influence them according to their own interests.
Well, I heard that all of these 23andMe and Ancestry.com samples Americans are sending to be analyzed are actually going to Chinese labs. I don't want to get conspiratorial, but have you heard anything about that?
Yes, I mean, I think if you listen to Kai-Fu Lee is kind of the leading artificial intelligence expert in China. What he says that the Chinese seek to do is become the Saudi Arabia of data in the 21st century. And because data can be used with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data analysis, then we face the challenge of not being able to know what is truth and what is not truth. And I think the way that you can think about this is 4 days after the elections in 2016, the Russians used artificial intelligence bots, social media, and big data analysis to create a protest in New York City that marched up to Trump Tower. Now, those people thought that they were supporting the declared leader of that protest, Black Lives Matter, when in reality it was the Russians. This is what you can do today with advanced technology and some of the algorithms that are being developed by companies like Facebook, Amazon, and Google. The Chinese have essentially adopted those along with the Russians to begin to influence societies, democracies from within.
General, that's fascinating. And we have only about 1 minute left, so I apologize. It's always the time goes by so fast. It's always so fascinating to get your take on and your information on this thing. One last question, though. Everybody's kind of chuckling about the Space Force, the Space Force. But is it going to be designed to, like, I see, connections to AI and maybe a greater level of our defense? Will it be involved around that?
Well, I think the idea is good. I think the challenge that we face is, particularly within the region in the Pacific Theater, the Chinese have built an inadequate land and air-based system that rivals their space system. And so for us, for the United States, just having a space system in the region means that our stuff on orbit is extremely vulnerable. We need to build, backups to that. And I think hopefully that will be the case in the future.
That'll be great. Well, thanks for your take on that. General, I'm sorry we're up on the hour, and I want to thank you so much again, always for your service to our country, but also for being our guest tonight on Dr. Jane's DC. You're wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Oh, wow. I just love General Spalding. I mean, we had him on in November. Look, we are up against the hour. Stay with the Exceptional Conservative Network. It's been a great show. Thank you for being with me tonight. This is Jane Ruby from your nation's capital signing off. Stick around for Ken McClellan, the Exceptional One, and the Exceptional Conservative Show. Have a great night, everyone.